I never thought that a simple hiking trip would turn into the worst nightmare of my life. Initially, it was just a short journey through the forest trails. During the day, everything looked peaceful. Sunlight piercing through the dense green canopy, birds chirping, and the wind carrying the scent of wild grass and damp earth. I even felt comfortable, as if I was escaping the suffocation of the city. But the sun waits for no one. It dropped faster than I expected, and as the twilight covered everything, I realized I was lost. At first, I tried to reassure myself that there was nothing to fear. I just needed to retrace my steps a bit, find the old trail mark, and that would be it. But the further I walked, the less I found the way out. The familiar path suddenly disappeared, as if someone had wiped away all the traces I had seen during the day. The sky darkened, and the moon emerged from behind the treetops. Cold silver light scattered across the forest, illuminating the dark tree trunks like giant pillars. Fog began to creep up from the ground, wrapping around my ankles like ghostly silk ribbons, making every step heavy and slow. I pulled out my phone. No signal, no map. Only the faint light from the screen, which only made the darkness around me more dense. I tried to turn on the flashlight. A small beam of light flashed, illuminating the space in front of me, but instead of feeling reassured, I shivered. The further I shone the light, the more the darkness seemed to swallow it, leaving only distorted shadows, dancing on the tree trunks, twisting into bizarre shapes. I stopped and listened. No more birdsong, no more insect sounds, only the gentle whisper of the wind through the branches. But right after that, in that suffocating silence, I heard another sound, very faint, very vague, like footsteps treading on dry leaves from somewhere behind my back. I spun around. There was no one, only dense fog and silent tree trunks standing tall like soulless guards. I forced a smile, telling myself it was just the sound of a branch breaking or some animal hiding in the dark, but my heart pounded faster and my hands clenched the phone so tightly they were soaked with sweat. I kept walking, but every step seemed to lead me into an endless labyrinth. The surrounding trees looked exactly the same, and the trail led to nowhere. Sometimes I thought I saw light in the distance, but when I approached, it vanished, leaving behind even thicker darkness. The space around me changed strangely. The trees seemed taller, bigger, as if they were leaning down to cover the entire sky. The wind howled louder, bringing with it a rustling sound, like someone's whisper calling my name, echoing through the leaves. I tried to listen closely, but the sound quickly dissipated, leaving a chilling silence. The cold began to seep deep into my skin. I pulled my jacket tighter, trying to shield myself, but somehow the freezing sensation didn't come from the wind or the fog. It came from something else, something invisible, watching my every step, creeping through every breath, sitting right behind me, waiting for me to stop, to whisper in my ear. I told myself to calm down, but the more I told myself to, the more my mind became disordered. Eerie images from old stories I had heard suddenly resurfaced. People often said that the forest at night held restless spirits, lost souls who could never find their way out. I always thought they were just stories to frighten children until I stood here, myself, deep in the dense forest, swallowed by the darkness, torn apart by fear with every breath. Then I realized something that made my heart almost stop. I could no longer hear my own footsteps. I was sure I was still walking, but the sound of dry leaves being crushed vanished. Instead, there was another set of footsteps, slow, steady, echoing behind me, softly but clearly, as if someone was tracking me, mimicking every movement, yet making no attempt to hide their presence. I froze. The footsteps also stopped. I mustered all my courage and turned around. In front of me was only darkness, fog, and the pitch-black shadows of the trees. But deep in that darkness, I briefly glimpsed something. Vague, very tall, skinny, a long, lanky shadow swaying among the trunks. It didn't come closer. It just stood there, motionless, watching me. My heart raced. I blinked, and in that instant, the figure disappeared. I told myself it was just a hallucination, just my mind playing a cruel trick to frighten itself. But deep down, I knew one thing. I was not alone in this forest. Something else was here. It knew I was lost. It knew I had no way out, and it was patiently waiting.
My footsteps became heavy, not just from exhaustion, but because I clearly knew one thing. The forest was no longer a forest. It was like a living trap, slowly closing around me. The moonlight, instead of guiding me, cast more distorted shadows. The tree trunks tilted, stretching across the ground into shapes that didn't belong to this world. One looked like an arm reaching out. Another resembled a long, open-mouthed, grinning face. I blinked repeatedly, telling myself it was just my imagination. But every time I opened my eyes, their shapes changed, twisting, contorting, as if they were playing with my mind. I started marking my path. I picked up a stone and carved a mark on a nearby tree trunk. The carving was fresh, but when I turned back just minutes later, the mark was gone. The trunk was smooth, cold, as if it had never been touched. My heart sank. I tried a second time, a third time. The result was the same. The space here obeyed no rules. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my breathing steady. But then, a sound rang out, shattering all my attempts at self-control. Singing. Very faint, very distant, but clearly a woman's voice singing. A lullaby tune, slow, melancholic. The voice echoed through the fog, creeping into my ears like a thin thread. I stood motionless. Who could be here, deep in the woods at midnight? I listened. The distant lullaby was getting closer and closer, as if gliding straight toward me. And when the wind shifted, I clearly heard the words, but it was not a language I knew. It was a strange sound, a whispering and the wind's howl, chilling me to the bone. I clenched my fists and walked faster, but the singing followed. Every time I stopped, it fell silent. When I continued walking, it started again, closer, clearer. I started to run. The dry leaves rustled under my feet, my heart pounding rapidly in my chest. But the more I ran, the more bizarre the scenery around me became. The trees now were unusually tall, like massive stone pillars piercing the sky. The fog condensed into dense patches, hanging like walls blocking my path. I ran through a thick patch of fog and nearly screamed. In front of me was a small, old, rickety wooden hut. It appeared abruptly, as if it had grown out of the ground. The faint moonlight shone down on the rotting thatched roof. The door was slightly ajar, and the inside was pitch black. I stood rooted to the spot. Why would there be a hut in the middle of nowhere? Maybe someone was living in it. Maybe I could find help. But a part of me screamed, "Don't go in." The wind howled fiercely, blowing open the wooden door. It swung open slowly, emitting a creaking sound like a moan. It was dark inside, but something flashed, a pair of eyes. I instinctively stepped back. Those eyes didn't look human. They were cold, sharp, and shone brightly like glass. And then a faint voice whispered from the darkness of the hut, "You have arrived." I dared not breathe. Before I could react, the hut door slammed shut. Everything returned to silence, with only the fog swirling around. I turned and ran, not daring to look back. But the feeling was still there, the feeling of being watched, not from a distance, but right at the back of my neck, just a breath away. Each time I looked back, I saw nothing. But as soon as I turned away, I clearly heard a wet, rattling breath, accompanied by the acrid stench of decaying earth and corpses. I started to lose control. My legs trembled, my eyes blurred. Somehow, I stumbled and rolled down a slope. Dry leaves, damp soil, and sharp stones tore at my skin, leaving stinging gashes. When I stopped, I found myself lying in a small valley, surrounded by tree trunks as wide as a room. The sky was mostly obscured, with only a few slivers of moonlight filtering through the gaps. I tried to stand up, but my hand touched something cold and smooth. I looked down. It was a bone. Not an animal bone, a human bone. Dozens, hundreds of bone fragments were scattered across the ground, skulls split open, ribs mixed with tree roots, and there were even hands with long black nails, shriveled up. I screamed, but the sound was trapped in my throat. The wind wailed. The fog swirled into a vortex, enveloping me. And in that mist, I saw shadows, human figures. They stood silently, surrounding me. They had no faces, just vague shapes, trembling like smoke. But I clearly felt their eyes piercing through me, heavy with resentment. One of them stepped forward. A voice rang out directly in my head, not through my ears, not through the air. "Why are you here?" I backed away, my heart pounding. A murmuring sound arose, a chorus of whispers like hundreds of voices overlapping, unclear in language, unclear in meaning, but full of anger. The ground shook. The bones scattered began to writhe, rolling and connecting. A skull rolled to my feet, stopped, and smiled. I panicked and ran. Rushing through the fog, past the giant tree trunks, I dared not look back. Just when I thought I had escaped, another sound rang out. Crying. No longer a distant lullaby, but a child's cry, very close to me, weak, desperate. My heart ached. My instinct told me to look for the child, but my rationality screamed, "There is no child here. It's a trap!" I stood at a murky crossroads, hesitating. On one side was deep darkness. On the other was the increasingly clear sound of crying. And then, in that moment, I realized, whichever path I chose, I wasn't truly getting out of this place. I stood motionless between the two paths. One side was swallowed by thick darkness, the other echoed with the whimpering cry of a child. My heart raced. Both were wrong. Both led to horror. But I had to choose. I inhaled deeply, then hesitantly stepped towards the crying. Instinct told me that the truth was hidden in that crying. Or the final trap. I took slow steps. Dry leaves crunched underfoot. The crying became clearer and clearer, now seeming right next to my ear. But when I looked around, there was no one. Over here, the child's voice rang out, clear, right in front of me. I pushed through a dense bush and froze. In a small clearing, under the faint moonlight, stood an old crib. It rocked gently, creaking. In the crib was a baby. Its skin was pale as wax. Its eyes were deep black with no whites. It was sobbing, its tiny hands reaching out as if for help. My throat tightened. All my instincts screamed, "Run!" But my feet were rooted to the ground. The baby looked at me. The crying stopped. Its mouth opened, stretching into a smile that did not belong to a child. Jagged, sharp teeth flashed in the moonlight. Its voice changed, becoming deep, rattling like 1,000 tearing winds. "You will stay with us too." The crib sprang up, tossing the baby into the air, but it didn't fall. The small body hung suspended, slowly rotating, then stretched and warped. Its limbs twisted, its body swelled, its skin cracked into patches, and black blood oozed out. A tall creature stood there, its eyes still deep black, still holding the look of the child, but now it leaned down, whispering right next to my ear. "There is no escape, no matter where you go." I screamed desperately and lunged towards the darkness, leaving the creature behind. But the darkness would not let me go. The more I ran, the more the forest changed. The trees seemed to grow denser, their branches scratching my skin. The ground beneath my feet was soft, soaked like mud. Then I realized it wasn't mud. I fell down. My hand touched hair. The ground was covered with wet, black hair, piled on top of each other, wrapping around my hands. When I tried to pull away, an entire head popped up from the earth. Its eyes were empty, its mouth wide open, letting out a silent scream. I thrashed, scrambled up, but other heads began to emerge. Dozens, hundreds of human heads with long hair tightly wrapped around my legs, pulling me down. "Stay! Stay!" the whispers echoed in my head. I struggled frantically, using all my strength to pull my legs free. I tumbled down another slope, rolling until my body slammed violently into a giant tree trunk. I coughed hard and looked up, and my heart almost stopped. In front of me was a tree. But it was not normal. The trunk was as wide as 10 people embracing it, and from the cracked bark, dozens of hands were reaching out. Some were skinny, some were childlike, some still had long, sharp black nails. All were reaching out, scratching, beckoning. And on the trunk, Rows of faces appeared, wrinkled, distorted, sealed in the wood, eyes wide open, mouths agape, but unable to cry out. One of the faces was mine. I saw my own face, my own eyes, but full of despair, my mouth wide open in a scream that would never escape. I burst into tears, backing away, trembling. But from within the tree trunk, a voice rang out, deep, echoing as if from the earth's core. It's too late. Every path leads to us. You are no longer a lost traveler. You have been chosen. The entire forest shuddered, leaves rustled, the wind wailed, the ground beneath my feet shook. The vague figures reappeared, surrounding me, this time closer, clearer. I saw their eyes, black, hollow pits. I saw their hands, abnormally long, reaching out towards me. I turned to run again, but realized I had returned to the same spot. The crib was still there. The monster baby was still standing there, its smile wider, black blood dripping onto the ground. There was no other way. I was being hunted, driven into the closed circle of darkness. The lullaby rang out again. This time it was no longer distant, but right inside my head, a distorted, fragmented lullaby, singing only one line repeatedly. Sleep now, sleep forever. My head throbbed painfully, my vision blurred. I collapsed to the ground, trying to fight the terrifying drowsiness that weighed on my eyelids. But as my eyes slowly closed, I saw something more terrifying than all else. Around me, in the darkness, hundreds of eyes were opening. All of them were staring at me, and they began to approach. I collapsed onto the cold, damp ground, my chest heaving, sweat and blood mingled, the metallic taste burning my tongue. I struggled to breathe, but each breath seemed to be drawn from the very thick darkness around me. Those eyes, hundreds, thousands, were still watching me. They didn't blink, didn't leave, didn't give me a chance to escape. I wanted to scream, to cry for help, but my throat was parched, only letting out weak, distorted sounds. From the fog, the lullaby rang out again. This time, it wasn't one voice, but a chorus of hundreds, thousands of whispers simultaneously. Sleep now, sleep now, stay with us forever. My body trembled. My eyelids were heavy as stone. I slapped my face hard, bit my lip to stay awake, but those eyes drew closer, and I realized they weren't just watching me, they were eating me, little by little. Not with teeth, not with hands, but with their gaze. Shreds of memories in my mind faded. My name vanished. The faces of my loved ones vanished. Everything I had ever known, ever was wiped clean, replaced by the rustling of the forest. I tried to scream, "Who am I? Where am I?" But my voice was swallowed whole. Just when I thought I was about to be lost completely, an unexpected escape route appeared. Far in the distance, within the forest, there was a faint yellow light, like from a lantern. I lunged towards it, ignoring the invisible hand scratching me, ignoring the screaming whispers. I fell, I crawled, I dragged my torn body toward that light. And then I saw it. An old wooden shack, its door slightly ajar. Inside was the flickering light of a fire. I almost cried with relief. I stepped in, slamming the door shut. In the small shack, there was a table. On the table lay an old diary, its leather cover moldy. I trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smudged, but I could read. If you are reading these lines, it means you are also lost. Don't trust the light. Don't trust the singing. This forest is not a forest. It is a door, and we are merely the ones kept to nourish it. My heart sank. I turned another page. How long have I been here? I no longer remember. I only remember that every night I see a new person, a new soul, running in the forest, screaming, terrified, just like I once was. And by morning, they disappear, but their faces remain on the tree trunk. I dropped the diary, my hands cold, and then I looked around. On the wall there was a large mirror. I walked up to it, trembling as I looked into it. It was no longer me. My face was gone. In the mirror was another girl, her eyes panicked, her mouth open, screaming silently. Her hair was matted with blood, her skin pale. I realized it was the person before me. I backed away, my heart pounding. And then the image in the mirror changed. This time it was me, but not the me of now, but me trapped in the mirror. I saw myself tapping on the glass, screaming, pleading for help, and I, in the real world, just stood still, helpless. A sharp pain shot through my head. My vision went dark. I collapsed, my hands scraping against the wooden floor. The lullaby rang out again, this time clear, right in my ear. You belong to us now. I opened my eyes one last time. The shack was gone, the fire was gone, only endless darkness remained. And I was standing at the foot of the giant tree. My face, distorted, desperate, had appeared on the tree trunk, merging with hundreds of other faces. I wanted to cry, I wanted to scream, but my lips were sealed shut in the cold wood. In the deep darkness, I heard footsteps. Someone was running, panicked, just like I had been. A new person had wandered in, and this time, I was the one watching them. I understood. The loop never ends. I was not just a victim. I had become a part of the forest. Another shadow, waiting, whispering, inviting. And when you close your eyes tonight, maybe you will hear this lullaby. Sleep now, sleep now. Stay with us forever.